So, over the past couple of weeks, I've seen a couple of things on LinkedIn that have really made me question everything. The first was a so-called recruiter saying that she considered any gaps in the CV to be a red flag. The second was the use of AI for initial interviews now by a lot of mainstream UK companies. And it's got me questioning, is the recruitment process now in UK broken? Maybe not for the employer, but certainly for the job hunter. Now, I'm going to try not to rant here, but we'll see where it goes. So if you've not watched before, my name's Carl, and I'm rebuilding my life in my mid-40s after losing my job. This channel's about that journey, what I learn, how I'm doing it, and the outcomes I hopefully get. So I'm getting up first thing this morning to try and avoid the heat later on. It's already quite warm and it's not even 9 o'clock yet, but we'll see how we get on. So let's talk about the recruiter and the red flags to start with. I saw a post, and I've got to confess, it's not the first one I've seen, where a recruiter turned around and said, when I scan CVs for my client, the first thing I do is look for any red flags. She then listed a few different red flags. One of the top ones was a gap in a CV. Now, the thing that worried me here was this wasn't a case of she saw the gap and then asked a few more questions. Instead, she chose just to completely reject it straight away. But the truth is, in this day and age, let's be honest, most of us, and I say people in our 40s, but even kids in their 20s have got gaps in their CVs. The current employment market, it is what it is. And why should, for example, a kid be penalised for maybe going travelling for a few months and having a bit of fun? Why should an older person like myself get penalised because I was made redundant and it took me time to find work? In fact, I even got questions a little while back about a gap I had in 2021. That was when I was made redundant and we were in lockdown and I was doing homeschooling for my lad at home. And that was seen as a negative thing. And that's just my story. There's plenty of people who've got gaps for different reasons. Maybe it could be they've been caring for someone, parenting, whatever it may be. We're human, we have gaps in our CV. And to be rejected straight away for that reason seems pretty harsh. Now, she gave some spiel about how it saves her time in a day and how it protects her client. But I gotta be honest, I just saw red with it. I nearly commented, but I chose not to. Very near least. Now, you could just try and ignore it and laugh it off. The problem about some of these recruiters is they are the gatekeeper to certain roles. Now, for me, if I want to stay in the industry I'm in aviation, I can kind of bypass them. It doesn't take much to work out who they're advertising for, and I can approach that company directly. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but to be totally honest, I'm looking after my own self-interest. But if I wanted to kind of leave the industry where I don't have the network anymore, that kind of thing makes me feel like there's less and less of chance of getting a change in role somewhere else. And for those companies, which I think like IT are very reliant on recruiters, where does that leave you if they have that kind of attitude? As I say, because these are the people that literally decide if you even get the first interview. So I think if people are getting rejected without even a conversation or a bit of clarity to why there might be a gap, I think we've got a real problem. And to be honest, that just makes me see red, to be totally honest. Curious if you found this yourself, if you had any issues with sort of gaps in your CV. What's your thoughts on her comment? So the next one is company using AI for interviews. Now, I may be behind the drag curve on this, but I knew companies use AI to sift CVs. I kind of got that, and I've seen that in play. Companies are now using AI to do the first interview to get the numbers down. And when I just first saw this, I just assumed, oh, maybe it's just tech companies that do it. I've never heard that before. And when I dug into it a little bit deeper, I realized it's not actually the case. The likes of EasyJet, McDonald's, Asda, Tesco, all use this AI for a lot of their first interviews, apparently. Now, my understanding of the way it works is that you go on a webcam for an interview at a certain time and date, and I think you get questions on a screen, and you have to look at your webcam and answer those questions. The AI then scores you on how you answer that question. But not only that, it's picking up on your language and how you communicate. So if you stall, for example, or you sort of stop and think for a second, it will downgrade you. Things like lots of ers and ums, which I know isn't great, but we're all human. And I think certainly when I talk to a camera, I make a lot more and ums than I would do if I was speaking to a human being. But if you do this in an interview, again, you'll be marked down for it. Now, my understanding is once that interview's done, you get scored, however the system's set up. And in most cases, if you score below a certain point, then you just get an instant rejection. A human won't even see your interview. AI will decide on behalf of the HR department. Now, to give you a story of where this breaks down, there's a guy in my network who is a qualified engineer, but has a bit of a stutter. And he applied for a job and got an interview. Now, he thought when they said about an AI interview, it would just be case some questions on the screen. He'd be typing and answer those questions. He didn't expect this whole looking at the webcam and speaking element. So he gave it his best shot. Of course, he's nervous and he started a couple of times whilst trying to answer the questions. And then surprise, surprise, he got rejected for the process. So he tries to reach out to the HR department to explain what had happened and if there's a way kind of sort of speak to them personally. And then of course what happens? Doesn't hear back. I'm sure they have their own excuses. I think we all call it being ghosted. Now, call me old-fashioned, but personally I think if I'm spending the time and effort to learn about a role and to apply for it and then have the interview, I at least very expect a human being to show up and actually listen to what I've got to say and give me the chance to demonstrate the skills that I have face to face. And don't get me wrong, I know that sometimes that includes an assessment day. That's fine, I've done a few of those. But at least still there's a human interaction, not just an AI bot deciding on your future. So I'm curious, has anyone come across this yet? Has anyone taken part in one of these interviews? I have to say for me, I think if I was offered an interview and found out it was one of these AI interviews, I think I'd refuse it. Maybe I'm naive, I don't know, but I just don't think I'd accept it. But as part of me, it's very tempted to try and get on one of these interviews and film it to show you guys what just goes on. I think that might be quite funny, so I might see what I can do. But have you come across this yourself? Have you had one of these interviews yet? How did you find it? Now, maybe I'm getting old, maybe the world's just kind of moved on, or maybe I'm just naive. But I think both the gap in the CV and the AI thing points to something. Company recruiters are treating people less like humans and more like data points. Yes, it saves the company time. Yes, it sifts through people quickly. And yes, it's more efficient for them. But as a human being, on the other side of it, I find it quite sinister. And to be honest, pretty disgusting. This is what they're now doing. Because behind every CV is a human being. Behind every gap, there's normally a story. And behind every single application is just a normal person trying to get an opportunity. Let me know what you think. Would a gap in the CV put you off? What would your thoughts be on having an interview with AI? Really interested to see what you've got to say in the comments below. Let me know. I'll leave it there. I was trying not to be too ranty. There could be a lot more swearing if I let myself go. But thanks for watching. As always, please subscribe if you're new to this channel. Please like, because obviously it helps the channel grow. And I appreciate you watching the video. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers for now.